Hello and welcome to Affinity. Contrast, local contrast and sharpening are all related, and we can look at them all together now to spot the differences in what happens. We're going to use this image, which has got a graded colour, it's got noise, small contrast, texture, larger texture, blur and various edges. We're also going to look at, more briefly, what happens doing the same command in a real picture. So let's start. So if I turn this one off, I'm going to turn them off as I go down. Start off with contrast. Watch what happens when I increase the contrast. See if you can spot things happening there. Well, one thing that's happened is the red here has changed. In fact, the colour, all the colours are changing, because that's the effect contrast has. Another thing, look down the bottom here, there are even steps along here. As I turn that up, the steps are smaller at either end and are then bigger in the middle. This is the equivalent of using an S-curve in curves, which makes the midtones more contrasty and pays for it with less contrast in the shadows and highlights. What else do we see in there? Generally speaking, you're getting lights getting lighter, darks getting darker in there. Let's look at the next one. But first we'll have a look over here. If I turn the contrast, that's the effect I get. So it pulls out the darks and lighters. And in a way, it looks like it's sharpening. So without and with. If you didn't know, you might think it had been sharpened. But it's just contrast. Take that one off, get to the next one. Now what we're going to do here is go to the tone mapping persona. This starts off the tone compression up, we turn that down, and we're just going to turn up local contrast. So let's see what happens here. As I turn up here, so this is local contrast, not overall contrast. And notice down here, the steps are kind of the same. We haven't got that sort of the midtones only. But what you're getting is a gradient across each one. Yeah, so within the colour, it's a more local effect. Up here, we're getting circles here. You're getting banding in this, and you get the darker circles around the outside. You've also, as with contrast, the red there is becoming more red. In here, the noise is getting noisier, and in the colours here, the darks are getting darker, and so on. So let's apply that. When we look at this in this one over here, it's already been done here. So the local contrast here, if you zoom into this, you can see something here, something to note here. Look at this brick here. This has got a lot of contrast across it. But if I put the original brick up, then there's not. In fact, if I put the contrast up, again, there's colour change, but there's not that amount of contrast across the brick, which you get from the local contrast like that. So it pushes a lot more, and there's a lot more blacks and all coming in here. So the local contrast is a particularly intensifies texture. Clarity is very similar but not as strong in here. So you've got the same brick changing over here. Over here, let's see what we can do with clarity. Turn this off. Turn up the clarity. What's happening here? Look at that again. Up, down, up, down. You're getting, when you turn up here, again, a little bit of a gradient across these. Each one of these, each band was the same colour, so it's a bit lighter, a little bit darker across there. Just a bit, I think. And you're getting the same effect as the tone mapping, but local contrast, but it's not as strong. So you haven't got the rings around in here. It's a lot gentler, in other words. We can look at because the clarity starts off in the middle, you can actually go down. So let's turn that off and go to reverse clarity and turn this down. And look what happens here. As I turn this down, these fade more. There is, what else can we see as we turn it down? The noise gets less, so it could be used for denoising, because effectively you're reducing local contrast here, which is the contrast across an area as opposed to across the picture, which is the contrast control is looking at. So that's reverse clarity there. Let's have a look over here. And reverse clarity now. Look at how much it flattens things. And this is back to a very much, hardly much, texture across here. And the whole picture, it's just flatter. Look at that compared to the clarity and without. They're taking the shine off things. It's just making it a bit duller. Let's have a look at the next one. And this is the unsharp mask. So normally in the unsharp mask, what you typically do is you turn up the factor and then you bring up the radius to see whether it's doing the sort of thing you want. So now you're getting lines around the outside of things here. And what else are you getting? You're getting the noise being amplified as well, which is why you should always denoise before sharpening. But you haven't got the amount of change in other areas down here, though you've got the edge effects. So it's a lot more about edge. If you look in here as well, look at this. As you turn the radius up, it completely blacks it out. So it gets quite extreme in there. But normally what you do, you turn the radius up to something you find and then turn down the factor until it's reasonable. So you've still got the edges here, but you've got a more realistic picture. Doing this here, this is what I get with the normal unsharp mask. Right, so the original picture is like this, and the unsharp mask, you can't see much there, but let's check it. See, I have turned this up. You have to go into the unsharp mask to see what's happening. So original, there, see, it's a much lighter sharpening now with the radius up and the factor up higher. You can also do a reverse of this. So if I take that up and go to the next one, which is high RA low AM, which is high radius low amount, or amount is the same as factor, here we turn radius up and we adjust factor. And you can see here this starts to come in, this light texture. You're getting an effect in here. And with a very, very small amount. Down here, you're getting this going up. In fact, you've got colour coming into it. Look at the colour coming in here. And this is normally a way of getting the local contrast, but you're going to be very careful with this. So, see, if I turn up the factor, I've got to bring the radius down for it to be, you need to come down quite a long way before you're losing the edge of this. So you've got to watch yourself very carefully if you're doing that high amount, low radius. So let's look at the next one. High radius, low amount. Sorry about that. Right. So here, this is what we're getting here with a high radius, low factor. So look at the original sharpening, subtle. Here, a lot more. See where this is spread round? So this is like the local contrast. You can put on the tone mapping here. See, that's the tone mapping local contrast. This is the high radius, low amount tone mapping. So you have the local contrast. So you're getting that kind of effect. So what next? That's one more to go, and that's the high pass. And with the high pass, check monochrome, send the blend mode to linear light and turn up the radius. and you're getting edge effects here. Notice here the edge effects are on the inside here. The unsharp, it was happening more around the outside. So look at this. This is this one. Look at unsharp. See, I've got lines around the outside here. Taking unsharp off, I got this in a different way. That's appearing on the inside. So let's have a look at this here. I'll take that off, and the high pass filter looks like this, as opposed to the original, which is duller. You can always push up this if you wanted to. Push this up a bit further. And if compared with that with the unsharp, which is like that. So in practice it's often fairly similar. But I often use high pass. Anyway, there we go. That's 10 minutes of comparing all the different ones. It's probably a bit, one for the more technically focused. And you want to look at the detail of the controls. But there it is, and I hope that was interesting. And I'll be back to doing something more normal in the next video. Thank you very much for watching.